Thank you for tuning in to watch our Invest Tampa Bay 6th Edition Leadership Summit. You're about to watch panel number 2, Intersecting Interests, why Tampa Bay's healthcare real estate alignment is key to overcoming challenges from regulations to infrastructure. Don't forget to like and subscribe to watch more leadership insights like these. Enjoy.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Much like Mayor Andy talked about, where he's asking, like, well, what does he have to do? Well, what does a banker have to do with a healthcare-focused event? And, well, candidly, most of this first panel that was up here, we do a lot to send patients to them throughout the way we take care of our clients. But the reality is, the focus of banking and what it is about is developing the community. Again, my name is Jason Russick, and it's my pleasure to serve as market president for City National Bank, all of West Florida. City National is about an 80-year institution, all focused here in the state of Florida. We serve both South Florida, Miami, Fort Lauderdale, Palm Beach, West Florida, Tampa Bay, Sarasota, Lakeland, as well as Orlando. With our rich 80-year history within the state, we are today at about $27 billion in assets, and it is our pleasure here to be one of the gold sponsors of it. I have the pleasure of introducing our panelists and our moderator. So Tirso Carreja. Tirso is the partner and co-chair of the Business Litigation Practice Group with Schutz & Bowen. Sean Williams, founder and principal architect, Carbon Design and Architecture. Chris Papayannis, Vice President, Advisory Realty Trust Group. And lastly, Tom Baccich, Executive Vice President, Development, Flagship Healthcare Properties. So if we could give them a nice round of applause and ask them to come on up to the stage.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name's Tirso Carreja. I'm here on behalf of Schutz & Bowen, and very proud and honored to be here at such a special event that's so important in our area. You're probably wondering, why is a business litigator here moderating this panel? I'm a bit of a hybrid. I do a significant amount. I'm a real estate guy. I do litigation, but I also do a significant amount of development, which includes the healthcare field. So that's why I'm here. And just wow, the prior panel was amazing. They did such an incredible job showing the different opportunities and things to look forward to within our region. This panel is geared more on the nuts and bolts. How do we get it done? Real estate is the linchpin of all of it. Without the real estate, you don't have places to provide the services, provide the areas for people to organize the services, and that's what this panel is all about, figuring out how to design it, build it, and site it so that at the end of the day, the services are where they're needed. So with that said, I'd like to direct the first question to the panel in general. So what do you guys think are the most urgent infrastructure and real estate related needs and challenges facing today's Tampa Bay healthcare ecosystem? And what are you guys doing to face those challenges? Sure.
Better? There we go.
Perfect.
All right. Number one is affordable healthcare, housing, sorry. Being able to get the talent near the hospitals, near the healthcare systems. It's a critical thing. It's not just for the healthcare side, but it's for the whole area to be able to produce any kind of economic growth here. We've got to find that affordable housing. It was interesting to hear some stories previously from healthcare providers that on-call nurses and doctors need to be within the 30-minute radius, and we're not able to provide that just yet. They're having to go further away. So I see that as the primary thing that we have to get fixed here before we move on to the next layer of infrastructure.
Thorn?
Yeah, when I was thinking about this question, I was reminded of kind of a growing trend where there's always new best practices in design and construction and planning theories, and what I've observed happening a lot recently is the codification of those best practices, and that represents progress in our communities. But one thing that our firm tries to do when we're helping to assist our clients who want to get a new outpatient medical office building out of the ground is working early on. Like, oftentimes in our projects we have to go through an entitlement change, a rezoning, a variance, and it's the nuance of working with those planning officials or those elected officials, and while they're in the process of codifying these best practices, I'm working with them to try to encourage them to use a medical reference, a scalpel instead of a hammer, and throwing the book at us. No, I'm sorry, these are the rules. Let's look at this in a nuanced perspective here. We're trying to deliver healthcare to your community. Let's work together and try to get the result that's the best for the community.
What about you, Chris?
Well, the previous panel really set the table, and we're seeing throughout, not just Tampa, throughout Florida, this growth and this huge impact. And all the health systems are mobilizing to grow. So you have an environmental vulnerabilities that come with the real estate. You have scarcity. You have cost of capital. So at RTG, we sit at that intersection with our healthcare partners and try to navigate that. It's such a challenge. They really need to see around those corners. And boots on the ground, we're trying to align all of those in the workforce housing that you mentioned. Huge problem. But we're trying to align all of that and provide the right capital planning and strategic outlook, because every health system has a different way of approaching the market. We saw the previous panel, 4 different hospital systems, 4 different focuses, different lenses, and so they all have a different strategy going to the market. So we have to understand that and help them find the best path for success.
Interesting. Thorn, there's a lot of variables at play. There's, you got to get the entitlements done. You got to get the zoning. There's cost inflation. There's, tenant needs. So what does a successful healthcare development project look like in that environment with all those different factors?
Yeah, there's a lot of variables and external challenges that you face as you get a project going. Where it starts for us, I think, is really ensuring that we understand the goals and that we're aligned in the mission with our clients that we serve, whether that's a provider group or a healthcare system. It's not the right time to bring in a developer is not when you're ready to build the project. It's much earlier than that so that we can help. Believe it or not, there's, the entire Tampa MSA, while a lot of it benefits from the same, demographic-driven tailwinds that are driving development and growth, it's much different to develop an outpatient medical facility in Hillsborough County than it is in Pasco County. For example, in Hillsborough County, you've got quite significant mobility fees that can add millions of dollars to your project, whereas in Pasco County, those are waived. So that's quite literally the difference in developing a 50,000 square foot building and a 60,000 square foot building. So if we're helping a client with strategy and you're very cost sensitive, it might make more sense if you need a location in Hillsborough County to try to find something existing, or to try to find a building that you can convert, an old retail box or an office or a call center, might help achieve the goals and bring value to our clients more so than just another ground-up development project. When you get into the project, it's a lot about having a team that aligns with, our vision of outpatient healthcare delivery. And, from the architectural perspective, that's an architecture partner who understands what it means to develop for a developer and the differences and nuances between outpatient and inpatient healthcare. From the general contractor's perspective, that's a general contractor who's expert at communication and project management, and has a pool of subcontractors who, again, understand the outpatient setting and not which is different than the inpatient setting when we're talking about driving value. From our client's perspective, it's very important to have a tenant rep or a stakeholder with the health system who can help make decisions or has a direct line to the person who can make decisions. And last but certainly not least, the civil engineers, if there's any of you out there, you guys are really the trailblazers for us when we're entering a new community and we're trying to figure out what a site can yield or what the hurdles are to delivering the project that we're promising the client. Very much rely on them to help identify the path and identify the challenges before they become problems.
Interesting. Chris, how is Realty Trust Group supporting Tampa Bay's healthcare system in developing decentralized, outpatient-focused strategies? And what kinds of facilities or services are proving to be the smartest investments right now?
The answer is ambulatory surgery centers. There's a lot of that in my world. We should do freestanding EDs because the reimbursements are high, and really, it really just depends on the actual health system strategy. And to start to uncover that, you have to have an optimization plan on the real estate portfolio, and understand what does the system have currently. Look at the data, but not just the demographics, the psychographics, CMS. Look at the actual patient data that the health system has. We found that to be the best indicator. It allows them to look at their portfolio and understand what actually, they can validate what they think is working, and typically they'll discover something they didn't know was working or wasn't working as well as they thought. We bring the medical groups in as well, so the physicians can see exactly how it's operating and what's firing and what isn't, and then understand the executive team's strategy. Where do you want to go? What are your strengths? We know TGH is level 1 trauma center. They have tertiary and quaternary. So they have a different strategy than Hopkins and their pediatrics. So everybody has a different way of approaching the market, and we need to understand that to be able to give them the best recommendations of how to manage that over the long term.
That's good advice. Sean, next question's for you. You were interviewed for Invest, and you mentioned during that interview that there's a trend in healthcare where institutions from Chicago and Indiana are eyeing Florida. And my question is, from your perspective, how's Tampa Bay capitalizing on that interest, and what can we do to make us more attractive?
You put me at odds with everybody that was up here before. The interesting thing of those, how much changes in a 10-month period, right? When you're talking through this, early on, I think they were attracted to the fact that we didn't have a certificate of need and that it looked like there was a large opportunity here. So we get the early calls about, hey, we're interested, and we see St. Petersburg growing, and all this stuff is in the news, and the interest of starting our practices there. But I don't think that they realize, as you heard from the panel before, the community that's here and how they integrate and work with one another. And I believe that it's that sort of integration and ecosystem that they've developed that kind of maybe pushes those other systems out for a little bit further. And as we see the players here start moving out of the Tampa Bay area and showing everybody the work that they've done and the expertise that they're projecting out there, the Chicago, the Midwest folks that were looking to come here sort of get quiet all of a sudden. I think a lot of that too has to do with cost of materials, cost of labor that's gone up, what's happening with the latest bill that went out there, how's that going to impact them. There's so many other things that I think get involved in their decisions that we're kind of the first person that they talk to just to test the waters, and then they start talking with the developer about, hey, this might be a good opportunity for us to start integrating into this. I think the one thing that they would have to look at if they wanted to integrate into the Tampa market is what is it that we're missing here, and how can you supplement and support some of the systems that are already here and make them better. And that would help not only bring them to the market, but bring the market better and make it more attractive to everybody.
Is there anything Tampa could do to facilitate that, in your mind?
I'm not sure. Obviously we already have. I think it was, you heard John talk about how he's making the tent bigger and trying to bring in other partners. Obviously talking to the Northeast. maybe we could be more open to it. Maybe we could start to say, you know, if you come down here, we can incentivize this. We could help you getting introduced to the ecosystem that's here, making sure that we're supporting that ecosystem in a positive way and not adding more competition to this, that would cause the market to collapse or have issues, you know, with the competition making either system fail.
That's great information. The next question I'm just going to ask in general to all of you guys. So data is playing a greater role in healthcare today, and also a greater role in making real estate decisions as far as siting and forecast growth and planning for community-related care. So what challenges are you seeing as data and tech landscape evolves, and what has been your specific approach to dealing with those challenges?
I'm happy
Thorn?
to start.
I'll start.
Sure,
Yeah,
everybody
sure.
has some thoughts. So there's a lot of great data analytics tools around healthcare to help inform real estate and site location out there. We subscribe to the advisory board, Revista, a number of others. A couple things I'll say is that the data isn't so useful unless you have someone who's really an expert at interpreting the data and explaining what it means and what the forecasts mean to a stakeholder in the healthcare setting who's making those strategic real estate decisions. Secondly, I think that if you're a smaller group and you're just, or even a bigger group, and you need to execute one project, you kind of know where it needs to go. The big data is less valuable. You always need kind of that boots on the ground broker advisor knowledge that is not replaceable, in my opinion. And the big data is just less valuable when you acutely know what you need to accomplish and generally where. In that instance, the boots on the ground intelligence is just outweighs it. It's just more important. But when you're talking about a larger provider group or a healthcare system and they're trying to assess their strategic roadmap for the future across a broad region, then I think that these analytics tools can be very helpful to inform you. You've got to start somewhere, and it can be a really great tool to get that process started.
Chris, what about you? What's Realty Trust Group do with the data that they gather, and what types of data do you guys get?
Sure. Well, we've seen health systems are fantastic at collecting information. They've got tons of data points. Filtering those and creating an actionable plan, that's the real challenge, because they look at, when you get into data, you know what you're talking about. There's an investor's approach and what kind of return they're going to get and who the tenant's going to be. But the health system doesn't care. They're the tenant. They're using the real estate to further their business, right? So they care about their providers, their patients. So we try to take their metrics, because all the rest of the data that everybody can buy, and it's the same. But when I look at a specific health system's data, and we look at what their providers are doing, the number of patients they're seeing, we have our own metrics that we provide to create a focus, to kind of find the signal through all the noise. And the health systems we work with find that really a fresh approach. So location is key. The executives are always saying, well, just tell me where I need to put this and what's the best place. And we'll get to that point, but let's first, I'm going to say it again, we need to look at how the rest of your organization is working. It's different from a private equity group that, hey, we're only doing urgent cares and we're just going to run with that, or we're only doing women's health and we're going to run with that. The health system is integrated. They have a lot of service lines. They have hospitals. Everything has to feed into the hospital. How is the referral path finding its way through the system? Where are the providers coming from? Where's the labor coming from? Again, workforce housing, it's a real problem. I've worked in other parts of Florida where nurses are driving an hour to get to work. How are you hiring these people? Where are they coming from? So we'll talk about the future in a second, so I'll just stop right there.
Sean, what about carbon design? What do you guys do with the data you gather, and what kind of data do you gather for the design services and architectural services?
Yeah, I was going to say, the data probably gets handed to us, from the various parts, and we have to interpret it to make sure that we're meeting their expectations, right? So expectations get set from the data that they get presented, and then we have to realize it and turn it into a three-dimensional space. Is the program functioning? Or, are we talking to the user groups? Are the user groups talking to each other? And then, so our data is more of a, you give us the numbers and we'll evaluate it based on, what we can put together and what we've seen in the past. So it's more of a reactionary approach to the data as opposed to being on the front end and being able to filter it down through. So by the time it gets to us, normally it's vetted and they have a really good idea what it's going to be, and we're just helping them visualize where the opportunities are.
Yeah, that's great.
And
Thorn?
And data is only as good sometimes as your decision makers and stakeholders can digest it and believe in it. I can't, speaking about no groups in this room, but I've been in meetings before where one of the lead physician stakeholders in a private physician group, they just look at it. You spend all this time crunching the numbers and figuring out exactly where they should go in the strategy, and they look at it and it's like, well, that location you recommend is 30 minutes from my house. That's not going to work. So you got to get the buy-in.
For sure, for sure. Well, Chris, you talked about the future, so we're going to go there now. We're there. So last question I want to direct to all of you guys as well is something that's often overlooked in an overlooked aspect of the Tampa Bay region. And tell me what you guys think is something that's an overlooked aspect of the Tampa Bay region, and what can we do to spur on to fix it?
I'll go first because I've worked in all the metropolitan areas of Florida, and there's tremendous growth everywhere. South Florida, Jacksonville, Orlando, Central Florida, and here, and everybody talks about the numbers and the percentages and the growth and people moving in and people moving out, but Tampa's unique because you have a very young population. You have a university setting here, unlike other areas. You have so many schools in a small urban proximity, and you're bringing in younger folks, and this really the academic platform that we heard about earlier today, it's real, and continuing those partnerships with Moffitt Cancer Center and TGH and USF and all the players, and building that academic presence really creates the fuel for long-term growth. I worked, unrelated to Tampa, I worked with a college of medicine, and they said that 70% of their graduating class stays in the community that they learned. So there's a valuable lesson in that. Most of the people that are using the research here, they're going to stay here. The majority will end up staying here, and that'll just continue to proliferate Tampa and bring it to the next level. And it really will be a national city if it isn't already.
Thorn, what do you think's an overlooked aspect of Tampa?
Okay, so first I'm officed in Charlotte, North Carolina. I grew up in the Carolinas. We have a local office here in Tampa. So I bring a little bit of an outsider's perspective. What I'm going to say probably doesn't resonate. Your question asked us to think about something that was often overlooked. I don't think that many people in this room might agree that this is overlooked if you're local here, but from an outsider's perspective, and this was certainly touched on in the first panel, for me personally, as I've become more integrated and worked in more projects in Tampa, it is the acute focus on the research in life sciences. I don't think from an outsider's perspective up in the Carolinas, the first thing you think about in Tampa is that it's a research or upcoming research and life science hub. You hear about the gray wave and the demographic push and Orlando Health entering the Tampa market and all the great competition. But from an outsider's perspective, for me, it's that research and life sciences focus.
Interesting. Chris? I'm sorry. Yeah.
Or the other Chris?
Sean.
There you go. Having grown up and born and raised in St. Pete, it is always interesting to me to see the last 20 years and how it's evolved. Through that gray wave of sorts, being God's waiting room to now being the city where the youth are. And in talking with some of them, why are they living in St. Pete? Why do they want to be in St. Petersburg? And it really comes down to quality of life, that live-work balance of being able to have all of that all in the Tampa Bay area. I think that kind of gets overlooked by a lot of the companies, and they're not realizing that the talent really wants to be here and be a part of that balance that we have. And then on top of that, we have all these great opportunities with the different healthcare systems, the universities that are here, the businesses that are now coming down and realizing this. When we had an office down in Sarasota, to compare Sarasota to St. Pete real quick, we had a really hard time recruiting anybody under the age of 50 to go down there and work in the office, because they wanted to be up here where it was lively, there were things going on, there was something happening every day. And now when you go to downtown St. Pete or the Water Street, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, there's always something going on, and they want to be a part of that, and that helps that network. And I think that's the one thing that's missing, is that future network gets overlooked, how the youth are networking and building up a lot of these ideas and research and innovation. We're starting to see now innovation districts start thriving. There's the Innovation District in St. Petersburg. There's, Water Street. There's innovation up at USF, and these are starting to attract a lot of the young talent and ideas that want to be heard and want to get out there. And I believe that we're providing that megaphone for them to be able to speak their ideas and get out from underneath some of the older guard and show that they are bringing something to the market and can help us grow.
That's fantastic. Well, I can just say, if you think about the last 10 years and the amount of healthcare-related real estate development that's happened in our area, it's just incredible. And I know you guys have all been, cornerstones in that development. And so want to thank you. I want to thank you for all of your advice and information today. And
Thank you.
that's the panel.
Appreciate
Thank you,
it. Thank you all.
everybody.